The first human civilization, the Sumerians. Imagine a world before cities, before writing, before the very concept of organized society as we know it. For hundreds of thousands of years, humanity roamed the earth, living as hunter-gatherers, their lives dictated by the rhythms of nature and the pursuit of survival. But then, something extraordinary happened. In a fertile crescent of land, nestled between two mighty rivers, a revolution began. A revolution of thought, of innovation, and of community that would lay the very foundations for all human civilization to follow. This is the story of Sumer. The land of the first cities, the first writing, the first laws, and the first true civilization. Join us as we journey back over 5,000 years to discover the incredible achievements of the Sumerians, a people whose ingenuity shaped the course of history in ways we are only just beginning to fully appreciate. Chapter 1: The Land Between Two Rivers. Our story begins in a region that would come to be known as Mesopotamia, a Greek word meaning the land between two rivers. These rivers were the Tigris and the Euphrates, born from the mountains of Anatolia, flowing southwards through what is now modern-day Iraq, before emptying into the Persian Gulf. For much of the year, this land was hot, arid, and seemingly inhospitable. But it was the annual flooding of these rivers, unpredictable yet life-giving, that held the key to an unprecedented transformation. As the floodwaters receded, they left behind a rich, fertile silt, a natural fertilizer that promised abundant harvests. However, harnessing this bounty was no easy feat. The floods could be devastating, wiping out nascent settlements. The dry seasons were long and unforgiving. This was not a land of easy living, but one that demanded ingenuity, cooperation, and immense effort. And it was precisely these challenges that spurred the Sumerians to innovate. For millennia, small groups had eked out an existence here. They learned to hunt, to fish, and to gather the wild grains that grew in the fertile soil. But around 10,000 BCE, a monumental shift began across the globe, the Neolithic Revolution. Humans started to cultivate plants and domesticate animals. In Mesopotamia, this meant cultivating barley and wheat, and raising sheep, goats, and cattle. This agricultural revolution allowed people to settle down. No longer constantly on the move, they began to build more permanent dwellings. Small villages emerged, clusters of mud brick huts dotting the landscape. But the true leap forward came with the mastery of water. The Sumerians realized that to truly thrive, they needed to control the rivers. They began to dig. Simple ditches at first, then increasingly complex networks of canals, reservoirs, and dikes. This was monumental work, requiring organized labor and collective effort. It was this shared necessity, this grand engineering project, that began to bind these scattered communities together. Chapter 2: The Rise of City-States. Narrator: As the irrigation systems grew more sophisticated, so too did the communities. More food meant more people. More people meant larger settlements. And larger settlements needed more organization. Over centuries, these villages transformed into something entirely new, the city-state. Each Sumerian city-state was an independent entity, a self-governing urban center surrounded by its own agricultural lands and smaller villages. They were like tiny nations, each with its own ruler, its own patron deity, and its own distinct identity. Among the earliest and most influential of these city-states were Eridu, often considered the very first city, believed to be founded around 5400 BCE. Then came Uruk, which by 3200 BCE had grown into a sprawling metropolis, home to tens of thousands of people, perhaps even up to 80,000 at its peak, making it the largest city in the world at the time. Its massive walls, stretching for miles, were a testament to its power and the collective effort of its inhabitants. Other prominent city-states included Ur, known for its magnificent ziggurat and royal tombs, Lagash, a powerful rival to Ur, and Nippur, considered the religious center of Sumer, home to the temple of Enlil, the chief god of the Sumerian pantheon. Life within these cities was a vibrant tapestry of activity. Farmers brought their produce from the fields, merchants traded goods from distant lands, artisans crafted pottery, textiles, and metalwork. The heart of every city-state was its temple, a towering ziggurat dedicated to its patron god or goddess. These monumental structures were not just places of worship, They were economic hubs, administrative centers, and symbols of the city's power and devotion. The priests held immense power, initially acting as the primary rulers, managing the city's resources and mediating between the people and the gods. Over time, as conflicts between city-states grew, military leaders rose to prominence, eventually evolving into kings. These kings were seen as divinely appointed, responsible for the welfare of their people, the maintenance of the irrigation systems, and the defense of the city. Chapter 3: The Dawn of Innovation. Narrator: The Sumerians were not just builders of cities, they were inventors, innovators, and thinkers whose contributions fundamentally reshaped human existence. Their solutions to the challenges of urban living led to breakthroughs that continue to impact us today. The birth of writing, cuneiform. Perhaps their most profound invention was writing. As cities grew, so did the need for record-keeping. How much grain was harvested? How many sheep were traded? Who owed what to whom? Simple tokens and pictographs were no longer enough. Around 3400 BCE, the Sumerians developed a system known as cuneiform, meaning wedge-shaped. Initially, it consisted of pictograms, simple drawings representing objects. But over time, these pictograms evolved into more abstract wedge-shaped marks, impressed onto wet clay tablets using a reed stylus. Crucially, cuneiform also developed phonetic elements, where symbols represented sounds, allowing for the expression of complex ideas and grammatical structures. This was not just a tool for accountants. Writing transformed society. It allowed for the codification of laws, the recording of history, the transmission of knowledge across generations, and the creation of literature. The Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the oldest surviving works of literature, was written in cuneiform, telling the tale of a legendary Sumerian king and his quest for immortality. Scribes, trained in specialized schools, became an elite class, holding immense power as the keepers of knowledge. The wheel, revolutionizing transport. Another groundbreaking Sumerian invention was the wheel, appearing around 3500 BCE. While initially used for pottery making, the potter's wheel, its application to transport was revolutionary. Early Sumerian chariots and carts, though crude, allowed for the efficient movement of goods and people, facilitating trade and military campaigns. The wheel, simple in concept, unleashed an explosion of possibilities for logistics and mobility. The plough, feeding a growing population. In agriculture, the Sumerians invented the plough. This simple yet effective tool, pulled by oxen, allowed farmers to turn over soil much more efficiently than by hand, significantly increasing agricultural output. More food meant the ability to sustain larger populations, further fueling urban growth. Mathematics and astronomy, ordering the cosmos. The Sumerians were also keen observers of the natural world and skilled mathematicians. They developed a sexagesimal, base 60, number system, which influences our modern division of time, 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour, and circles, 360 degrees. They used this system for complex calculations, surveying land, and managing their vast irrigation networks. Their astronomical observations were equally impressive. They tracked the movements of celestial bodies, developing a sophisticated calendar system that helped them predict the annual floods and plan their agricultural cycles. They identified constellations and laid the groundwork for later Babylonian and Greek astronomy. Architecture, the ziggurat. Sumerian architecture was dominated by the ziggurat, a massive stepped pyramid structure built from sun-dried mud bricks. These towering temples were not just buildings, they were sacred mountains, believed to be the dwelling places of the gods, connecting the heavens and the earth. Each city-state vied to build the grandest ziggurat, a testament to its piety and power. Law and governance, seeds of justice. As complex societies, the Sumerians also developed early forms of law and governance. While Hammurabi's code, Babylonian, is more famous, the Sumerians had earlier legal codes, such as the Code of Yornamu, dating to around 2100 BCE. These codes established principles of justice, property rights, and punishments for various offenses, providing a framework for social order. Trade and economy, the cradle of commerce. The Sumerians were active traders. Lacking essential resources like timber, metals, and precious stones, They engaged in extensive trade networks, exchanging their surplus grain, textiles, and manufactured goods for raw materials from distant lands like Anatolia, the Levant, and the Indus Valley. This led to the development of early economic systems, including standardized weights and measures, and the concept of a barley money as a medium of exchange. Chapter 4: Society, Religion, and Daily Life. What was life like for the ordinary Sumerian? Their society was highly structured, a complex tapestry woven from various roles and responsibilities. Social hierarchy. At the apex of Sumerian society was the Lugal, or king. He was the supreme ruler, military commander, chief judge, and often the high priest. His authority was considered divinely sanctioned. Beneath the king were the priests and priestesses, who wielded immense influence. They managed the temples, interpreted the will of the gods, and oversaw vast temple estates that often functioned as economic powerhouses. The scribes formed an elite and respected class. Their mastery of cuneiform gave them unique power and access to knowledge. They served in temples, palaces, and as administrators for merchants. Merchants and artisans occupied the next rung. Merchants facilitated trade, bringing exotic goods into the cities, while skilled artisans produced everything from pottery and jewelry to tools and weapons. The vast majority of the population were farmers, who toiled in the fields, cultivating grain and tending livestock. Their labor was the bedrock of Sumerian prosperity. At the bottom of the social ladder were the slaves. Slavery was common, often a result of debt, capture in war, or being born into servitude. Slaves performed various tasks, from domestic work to labor on construction projects. Religion, a pantheon of gods. Religion permeated every aspect of Sumerian life. They were polytheistic, worshipping a vast pantheon of gods and goddesses, each associated with specific forces of nature, cities, or aspects of human life. Enlil, the god of wind, air, earth, and storms, was often considered the king of the gods. Enki, the god of water, wisdom, and creation, was revered for his role in bringing civilization to humanity. Inanna, later Ishtar, the goddess of love, war, and fertility, was a powerful and often unpredictable deity. Nanna, later Sin, was the moon god, and Utu, later Shamash, was the sun god. Sumerians believed that humans were created to serve the gods, to provide them with food, shelter, and worship. The ziggurats were not just temples but cosmic mountains, linking the earthly realm to the divine. Rituals, prayers, and offerings were constant, aimed at appeasing the gods and ensuring their favor. They believed that the gods were often capricious, and human suffering could be a result of divine displeasure. The Sumerians also developed a rich mythology, explaining the creation of the world, the origins of humanity, and the adventures of their gods and heroes. The Epic of Gilgamesh, while a tale of a king, also delves deeply into Sumerian beliefs about life, death, and the search for meaning. Daily life. For most Sumerians, daily life revolved around work and family. Homes were typically built of mud brick, with flat roofs used for sleeping in the hot summer nights. Families were patriarchal, with the father as the head of the household. Their diet consisted primarily of barley, which was made into bread and a form of beer. Fish from the rivers, dates, and vegetables supplemented their meals. Meat was a luxury, usually reserved for special occasions. Clothing was simple, typically made from wool or linen. Men wore kilts or skirts, while women wore draped dresses. Jewelry was common, even among the less wealthy, often made from shells, beads, and semi-precious stones. Children played games, and education, particularly for boys from wealthier families, involved rigorous training to become scribes or priests. Music and entertainment were also part of life, with instruments like lyres and drums accompanying songs and storytelling. Despite the challenges, Sumerian cities were vibrant, bustling centers of human activity, innovation, and culture. Chapter 5: Kings, Empires, and Decline. The Sumerian city-states, while sharing a common culture, were often in conflict. Disputes over land, water rights, and trade routes led to frequent warfare. This constant struggle for dominance eventually paved the way for a new era in Mesopotamian history. The rise of Akkad, Sargon the Great. Around 2334 BCE, a new power emerged from the north of Sumer, led by a man named Sargon. He was an Akkadian, a Semitic-speaking people who had adopted much of Sumerian culture. Sargon, through military genius and strategic alliances, began to conquer the independent Sumerian city-states one by one. He established the Akkadian Empire, the world's first true empire, stretching from the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean Sea. Sargon's reign marked a significant shift. While the Akkadians adopted cuneiform and many Sumerian religious practices, their language, Akkadian, became the dominant administrative language. This period saw a fusion of Sumerian and Akkadian cultures, but it also signaled the end of Sumerian political independence. The Akkadian Empire lasted for about 150 years before collapsing due to internal strife and external invasions, particularly from the Gutians, a mountain people. The Neo-Sumerian Renaissance. Following the fall of Akkad, Sumer experienced a brief but brilliant resurgence known as the Neo-Sumerian period, or the Third Dynasty of Ur. Around 2112 BCE, Ur-Nammu, a king from the city of Ur, expelled the Gutians and re-established Sumerian dominance. Ur-Nammu's reign was a golden age for Sumer. He oversaw the construction of magnificent ziggurats, including the Great Ziggurat of Ur, and initiated a period of cultural and economic revival. Crucially, he also promulgated the Code of Ur-Nammu, one of the earliest known legal codes, predating Hammurabi's code by several centuries. This code reflects a sophisticated legal system focused on restitution rather than purely punitive measures. However, this Sumerian renaissance was relatively short-lived. The Neo-Sumerian Empire faced increasing pressure from invading Amorites from the west and Elamites from the east. The final decline. Around 2004 BCE, the city of Ur was sacked by the Elamites, marking the definitive end of Sumerian political power. The Sumerian language gradually faded from spoken use, replaced by Akkadian, though it continued to be used as a sacred and scholarly language for centuries, much like Latin in medieval Europe. The people themselves didn't vanish. They were absorbed into successive Mesopotamian empires, the Old Babylonian, Assyrian, and Neo-Babylonian empires, who built upon the Sumerian foundations, continuing their traditions of writing, law, and urbanism. Chapter 6. An enduring legacy. Though the Sumerian civilization eventually faded from the political stage, its legacy is immeasurable. Their innovations were not confined to the land between the two rivers, they spread, evolved, and continue to shape our world today. Consider the very concept of the city itself. The Sumerians invented urban living, the idea of a large, organized community with specialized labor, governance, and infrastructure. Every city on Earth owes a debt to their pioneering spirit. Their invention of writing, cuneiform, was a monumental leap. It unlocked the power of recorded knowledge, allowing for the accumulation and transmission of information across time and space. From cuneiform, other writing systems evolved, eventually leading to the alphabets we use today. Without writing, complex societies, advanced science, and detailed history would be impossible. The wheel, a deceptively simple invention, revolutionized transportation and mechanics. From the potter's wheel to the wheels on our cars and machinery, its impact is ubiquitous. Their mathematical system, based on the number 60, is still embedded in our measurement of time, 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour, and in our geometry, with 360 degrees in a circle. Our calendar, with its division of the year and the tracking of celestial movements, has roots in Sumerian astronomy. The Sumerians were pioneers in law and governance, laying the groundwork for codified legal systems that would evolve into the complex legal frameworks of modern nations. Their massive architectural feats, like the ziggurats, demonstrated early principles of large-scale construction and engineering. Their myths and epic tales, particularly the Epic of Gilgamesh, influenced later Mesopotamian, Hebrew, and Greek literature, echoing themes of heroism, friendship, mortality, and the search for meaning that resonate with humanity to this day. The Sumerians were not just a people of the distant past, they were the architects of our present. They faced the challenges of their environment with ingenuity and cooperation, transforming a harsh landscape into the cradle of civilization. They gave us the city, the written word, the wheel, and the very concept of organized society. Their story is a powerful reminder that the greatest leaps forward in human history often emerge from the necessity to solve problems, and from the collective will to build something greater than ourselves. The echoes of Sumer still resonate in our laws, our calendars, our cities, and our very way of thinking. They were the first, and their legacy ensures that they will never be forgotten.